Hungary in F1 is a really challenging track, especially in wet conditions. You have to really be careful of the rear of your car, trying to overtake the front at a few corners, especially those long 180-degree right and left-handers. Kicking things off with the aero setup, to really control the rear end and kind of prevent it from turning around on you, I have increased the rear aero by 5, going 50 and 45. And then for the transmission, I've lowered the on-throttle diff down to 20, which is quite a significant drop from our dry setup. I've kept the off-throttle diff exactly the same, but I've increased the engine braking up to 90. In both wet conditions and since the most recent patch, you can get away with higher engine braking settings. For the suspension geometry, I've left the camber at left and set the front toe to 0, while increasing the rear toe ever so slightly for a little bit more rear stability up to 0.07. I've then adjusted the suspension slightly, softening everything all around. Go 35 and 4 on the front and rear suspension, then 15 and 8 on the ARBs. For the ride height, I've increased things. I've increased it by 2 at the front, up to 27, and bumped it up by 3 at the rear, up to 58. For your brakes, I've lowered the pressure down to 98%, just to stop with a little bit of front lock-in, and then set the brake bias at 55%. For your tyres, things will run really hot around Hungary, so you want almost max pressures. I've gone 29 on both front, right and front left tyre, and then I've set the rears to maximum at 26.5. After a few laps with this setup in the rain, you should really be able to start to push your car and chase those faster lap times. Now, I have created this setup using intermediate tyres in wet conditions. If you're running the extreme wet tyres in very wet conditions, you might want to increase the rear aero a little bit more and play about with those tyre pressures to get them in the right working window. They will run a little bit cooler in wetter conditions. And just a quick note, because I get asked this question all the time, I've created this setup with a racing wheel with all assist disabled. And that's going to round out our Hungary WET Car Setup for F1 24. I'm going to move on to the next setup, and I will see you guys on track.